Hello, I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Magic Lesson 106, I believe. Will and Intention. It's really a part 3. It's almost a continuation yet again of intention setting to create actionable effects, but with a slightly different focus. And I did burn some incense. It's burning now in this space and light a candle. Hopefully, this isn't the space I usually use to record on this property, but I'm hoping to, by being more mindful, avoid some of those vibratory effects we had last time. It became a little difficult to record when the table was shaking. So, hopefully, that won't happen again. Although if it does, it's as the universe intends. So intention and will. There's a bit of a rub, right? When people say, so here's the rub. Will and intention, generally, it's untrained, especially if we haven't practiced very many occult arts yet, or perhaps other conditioning arts, say like martial arts is a physical conditioning practice, a mental conditioning practice. Yogic arts, again, mental and physical conditioning practices. When we haven't spent a lot of time or don't have a lot of experience in those, spheres of awareness, will and intention tends to be untrained or trained by others and used. Like our will can be very easily used without our intention necessarily being involved through practices of conditioning, which society and culture absolutely does instill as hard as it can, as quickly as it can, in order to create a cohesive whole sometimes, in order to pass forward lessons that the species believes to be of great import, for better or worse. So our will and intention, when we haven't worked with them yet directly, when we haven't acknowledged that they're very much out of alignment, or perhaps under someone else's auspices other than our own, they tend to be untrained, unhoned, unpracticed. That makes sense. If we haven't practiced it yet, it's going to be unpracticed. And sometimes even when we do work with them, possibly for years, they just don't always get along. What's happening for us cognitively and consciously is not always what's going on with us unconsciously, which seems a simple thing that, of course, right? That's not exactly an aha moment, but it is something that we almost oversimplify and don't give enough credit to. That perhaps much more holistically, fundamentally, unconsciously, on different planes, vibrationally, that these two things aren't getting along. All too often, will and intention work against each other. And then there's, again, that conditioned mud murk of things like wishes or hopeful thinking or expectation, egoic expectation, what we expect or want or feel that we need an outcome to be. Focusing on what we do not or what is not is what's actually going on there. And we do it in a way as if it could ever be anything other than a negating force, which of course it is. And that's a response mechanism that, again, very often is taught to us at a very young age, and we pick it up like sponges mentally and we adhere to it. So wishing is almost the antithesis of clear intention. Not quite the exact antithesis, but pretty darn close. It's and well hidden, because you think if you're wishing for something, you're wanting it, you're actually not. What you're doing is acknowledging that you don't have something, and that in a very passive way, you understand all you can do to achieve that thing is be hopeful towards it with the clear expectation that it will never manifest. So again, it's hidden. It seems like, when I wish for something, it's because I want it. It's not. When you're wishing for something, it's because you're acknowledging that you don't have it. So again, this vague, lazy, constant reaching out for a corresponding vibration of acknowledging lack of in some way or another. And the worst part is that, yes, like everything, wishing carries energy. It really does. Every wishful thought, egoic or otherwise, or verbally announced wish is spell work, is a very powerful directive energy toward an outcome. I wish they'd leave me alone, right? That's a powerful statement. Think about what's actually being said there. It rarely is that what's actually being wanted in a moment. Usually when someone says something like that, I think we can all acknowledge what's wanted is an awareness of, a lack of evolution in another person or in ourselves, perhaps an irritation within a moment of time where we aren't being clearly balanced, or someone else perhaps that we haven't removed ourselves from yet is acting in a dangerous or unhealthy way, mentally or emotionally. But we don't want to be left alone, right? No one wants to be the last man on earth. And yet look at the power of that statement. I wish they, a very loose, vague term, these sorts of loose, vague, unconscious thinking speech patterns, just who is they really? It's not the person in the room with you, or that's perhaps that you feel is irritating you, right? As you have a very unbalanced moment inside of yourself and realize that only you are in control of you and no one can really do anything to you emotively. But when you say they, you don't say their name. It's not like you stand there and say, I wish, I'm just going to use initials so I don't use anyone's name, like FDR would leave me alone. You don't say that. You just say, I wish they would leave me alone. That's what you say in your head. And that's a very broad, a very vague, and a very powerful statement. So you can see how wishing, generally, this thing that we don't acknowledge that's always going on, it's not a good thing. And then when we do actively wish for what we consider good things, what we consider to be positive things, so not maybe in a negative moment, but very clearly like, I wish I had a higher ability to perceive the best route to take in this situation. That sounds like a wonderful thing to wish for, except that you're wishing for it. So rather than actually doing it, seeking it out, setting an intention for it, you're wishing it, which really is just acknowledging that it's impossible, that you don't have it, and that it's near impossible and would take some huge work, some great miracle or something outside of yourself for the universe to be in alignment with your wants or needs, which of course you are the universe in alignment with whatever you're doing. So if you're wishing for something, you're the one stopping it from happening because you could simply be making it happen. And that's the actual outcome being desired and understood by the will. That's something you're wishing for is being acknowledged as impossible. So when the loose, lazy sort of intention of a wish is made, it's undirected energy feeding this very directed outcome, the outcome of the wisher, creating a state of being where they know, deeply know, fully, holistically, at a universal realism level, that they do not have what they wish and that it's difficult and therefore needs to be hard to obtain. There's little to no possibility of such a thing occurring, right? That's what you're actually saying when you're wishing without intention and will being cohesive together in a directed way as an occultist. So and this is what most people do, right? Why it must be wished for. And yet what you're doing is you're reminding yourself that you're deeply aware that it is incredibly unlikely to be or ever be unless it involves mechanisms outside of your control, which of course nothing is. And yet everything is, because in a very real way, control is an illusion. But to simply be, on your game, in the flow, synchronizing with the ebb and flow around you, that's going to result and you very much, for lack of a better egoic way of saying this, getting your way. So a passive hex against your own best interest, where you energetically reinforce a knowing on all planes that what is wanted must be unlikely or impossible. And then that's what is being manifested by that manifester in that reality, is this passive hex against themselves. Will is involved in a wish. Awareness of intention is not. So wishing actually reinforces the will's constant monologue of, I could never and will never by will this thing to happen. And will, being such an incredible primal force, almost always beats out this very kind of passive, unacknowledged sort of maybe intention of 2% out of 100, right? When the two are set against each other, when it's will versus intention in this way, what's actually being projected is always going to win out. That's why, it's one of the many reasons why wishes are dangerous. And again, we see this all through folklore, mythology, occult lore. Wishing is not necessarily a good thing. It's why we tell the young and untrained not to voice their wishes, right? If you say a wish, it won't come true. That's, well, amongst, again, a very good occult teaching of not involving other people in your intentions for any reason, which creates a great deal of backfeed and interference. And 99 times out of 100 is going to actually get in the way of your intention persisting and creating. So don't speak your intentions aloud. That's part of it. But also because when we speak, we give a spell more power. Vocal energy is an energetic vibration. It is powerful. So when you make a wish out loud before you say blow out your candles or something like this, it's all too likely that although the magic being entered into is being done idly and without the proper training and will involved, that the wish is going to happen perhaps in not the way you want it to, or perhaps because you've now spoken it will likely never turn out as wanted. So don't say wishes out loud. If you say a wish out loud, it won't come true, right? If all wishes carried will or correct set focus of intent, like and trained intention, the world would be a very different place. But for magic to work the way the magician wants, that requires dedication, mentally, perseverance, great discipline, absolutely relentless dedication to their craft. Everybody likes participating in the quote unquote magic of wishing, but very few are willing to dedicate themselves to the great work that actually acknowledges what is making such a thing possible. Will has psychic, physical, and spiritual energy. You can, in fact, when you intend it, will things to happen. Now, in some ways, this seems like a massive claim. And in other ways, when I apply will and focus, I can intend things to happen. I make what I intend come true. That doesn't seem like a big claim at all. It seems very matter of fact, very simplistic, very obvious, very common sense. So think about it. Just about how honestly deceivingly simple and true this statement, when you intend it, you can will things to happen. That is a very honest statement. You can, with intent, will things to happen. Your intention, before turning this video on, was to listen to this video. Your will energetically enforced that reality manifesting into being on the material plane. That's a lot. That's like a lot. And now you're listening to this video because you can will things to happen when you intend it, if will and intention are brought together in a cooperative way and then released. The effect is then created in the material world. In this example, the material world possibly only anyway, because there are other planes or other worlds. So why does the intent to listen to this video work if the intent of a wish doesn't? Well, think about it. If you say didn't have your phone, your internet wasn't working, maybe you're in front of a computer, I don't know, where you're listening to this little YouTube podcast, at work, not having time, feeling like you don't have time to listen to the video, doing something else that you feel got in your way. And now what you're doing is sitting around wishing you could listen to the video. You're actually getting in the way of yourself actually completing that goal. If anything, you're acknowledging the universal constant that you think you already perceive, that it's very difficult, it's not happening, it can't happen, and won't happen. Right? So that's wishing. But intention, when you intended to listen to the video and then did, that works, even though the intent of a wish doesn't, because the intent of a wish is for something not to be fulfilled. Remember, the will is all too often out of step with intention and not really doing what we think it's doing, even with something as simple as a wish. So in this specific example, again, right, there's an authoritative knowing that you could and would listen to this podcast, and that became the commanding intention that the will's energies enforced, all done so cohesively, so cooperatively, and completely that it simply is. The actual will and intention came together, this became. That's it. That's all of it. When they're out of step, remember, when the will is all too often out of step and not really doing what we think it's doing, that doesn't happen. So on some level, I will watch the video, happened, or I will listen to the podcast, happened. That's a command. Now, you might not have acknowledged it. You might have not spent a lot of time dwelling on it, but at some point, even if it was just click, I'm going to push this little button on this electronic screen and this video is going to pop up. That was a commanding intention that will's energies enforced. I will do this. And that's very difficult to circumvent. I am doing this, right? Again, a command, authoritative. If you know it will be, it will be. And so the will propels that already foregone conclusion. And that is how all of your intention setting and magic should and must work if your magics are going to work well for you. An assertive statement of absolute doesn't leave room for internal backtalk, subconscious wiffle waffling, vibratory dissolution, backfeed in the interference of other people's possible vibration inputs, any kind of external interference. If what is, then it is. And nothing stands in the way of that. When we recognize what is before it is, we're just doing that. We're jumping the gun a bit because we have an awareness that we can, as occultists, that we can become aware of what is before it happens. And so that reality, what's really going on is it's running, right? We're giving that reality the opportunity to come meet our already set in stone criterion. When done correctly, magic like this sees the universe tripping over itself in its haste to catch up with the framework that the Magi has already set, so then must already be true. And you will notice this when your magic starts to take effect, when you start completing them correctly in this way. The most bizarre goings on will happen in order for reality to catch up what must already be. And you'll be like, wow, that's kind of incredible. And yes, it really does work. Done correctly, even when it breaks natural laws, the universe will find a way to conform itself to the manifestor's perceived reality. Now, the problem is that when you can't really break natural law, so what we perceive as a miraculous or spontaneous happening isn't really, nature is law. But it's just our perception of it and our ability to be aware of other things that we don't have any experience with yet. Kind of getting off track. We are the perceivers after all. So if you magically tell a wall, it is now a door, right? Let's use this. Say with enough authority, that wall is a door. You visualize it, you see it, you know it to be a door. You see yourself walking through it mentally, and it's only ever been a door because it is and will always be a door. Not, you're not even thinking of the wall. It's just a door. If you place that message deep enough, reality will conform. Powerfully enough in certain energetic planes, that sent signal will become irrefutable. It will become the way. The energetic code, once changed, will in fact create a door for you. Now, hopefully, if you're doing this for some reason, you're creating an energetic door to walk through in a very safe way. Now, if you're not doing that and you're trying to break the laws of nature, you're going to walk through a door that only you know exists while this material plane doesn't, and maybe bruise your face as you walk into a wall. But for you, it is a door, and you might even break through that wall without hesitation, possibly at great harm to yourself, because it needs to be a door, because it is a door for you. So that's a different thing, but you see what I mean? Like, natural law doesn't really change, but it also absolutely does. It might have to bend the very fabric of your senses and neural network to do so. You might need to go mad, as it were. But that, in a way, doesn't break natural law, so the universe will make you go mad, even if it's of no use to you, in order to make reality consistent with will and intention. But you will, in fact, experience that reality of a door. You might be insane in comparison to every other vibratory energy around you. But one way or another, that is going to happen. So far easier for the universe to have you remember to call, say, that one friend that you forgot was an architect, and then they happen to swing by and say, hey, there should really be a door here. I feel like there's a door already here. I can see it. Mind if I build you one for fun? That's what I mean by the universe tripping over itself sometimes to catch up with what you've already created. It could be a friend you haven't spoken to in 20 years, or just random car breaks down. Now there's an architect standing at your door asking you to use your phone and saying, I really want to build a door here. And it seems very strange, but it isn't at all. It's actually a very simple way compared to, say, driving the occultist insane to create a door. This is a much easier way to manifest that door, even though it seems more spontaneous or miraculous or odd. But one way or another, again, if you do that magic correctly, that wall is going to be a door because it already is a door. You've already energetically made it so. The external physical plane is now just playing this game of catch up. You aren't suspending belief when you do magic. You aren't. You're rewriting your belief. If any part of you during intention setting is suspending belief or suspending disbelief in order to do the ritual or the spell or the casting, you're not quite there yet. Your magic might fail or it might manifest in ways that aren't intentional. There's no room in magical intention for anything other than this is what you already know to be true. This is the way. This is the way it always was and always will be. The current seeming state of the as yet unfulfilled intention, that is the delusion. The perception of time, past, present, and future, that's the illusion, right? The intention is already fulfilled and fulfilling. It is. It will present itself in actuality, or perhaps inaccurately, until it remakes itself in accordance with your experience of it. I hope that's not too confusing. I'm trying. So intention magic is not about convincing yourself that, say, the ritual you're doing isn't ludicrous. In many ways, every ritual is ludicrous. In other ways, nothing you've ever done or could do would ever be ludicrous. So, intention magic is about remaking reality as you have already decided it to be. That's the next step, is knowing that you already did. Once that ritual is done, before you even began the ritual was already finished. As odd as that sounds, again, right? Some things always are of a happening. And this isn't about dominance either. No single occultist is ever dominating the all. Right? That's like the hubris and that sort of an idea. The very idea of that is, it's just that we form in these languages, in these methods of bodily movement, perhaps if you're doing body movements in ritual and hermetic magic, the trappings of objects like candles and wands and goblets. We need all of this seemingly telling us, reinforcing these things, what to be. And when we take this authoritative stance when we do our rituals, just to be able to engage with what already is in a complete accordance with the all. It's not as if we're remaking the universe. We're acknowledging what the universe is. We just have to go through all of these, again, machinations in order to come into alignment with it. Because of how we are, we have to convince ourselves we're the ones doing it in a way. So because we're already always manifesting what is. We're already making that. We're just in this we're in such a conditioned, a self-limiting perception of being that we need all these other things like ritual commands and costumes and gestures. Very important, yes. But we need these things to break through to our actual selves, because we're living in a delusion where we don't have access to ourselves and our power without those things, breaking down those barriers so that we can take action from a place of knowing and being. Because we already actually are and have access to that. And despite what others may say, there are not infinite factors in magic. We see this a lot, like if you do 3 leaves, maybe dropped in the cauldron instead of 2. If you say it at, 432 megahertz and really work for the vibration in your diaphragm, right? But you spiked on that word. Oh, now the magic will go wrong. There are not infinite factors that are going to get in the way of every outcome. That is not how manifested magics works. If you do your magics correctly, in the ways that matter most, mentally, in step with the great principles and great laws, your magic is going to work every time, even if you accidentally drop a whole branch of mistletoe rather than a few berries into your incense pot, right? So whether or not you're evolved enough to realize that it's working and why you're doing these things is another matter entirely. Part of setting intention correctly lies in recognizing that it is very likely from my limited human temporal form that we do not know what's best for ourselves. Even when we think we do, we might think living another day is best for us. It may not be. We might think giving up entirely is best for us. It may not be. We are functioning from a very limited perspective. We might think the best thing for us is to get a car. It might not be. Not having one might be what stops someone from running into you within the next 30 days or something like that. You can't see those things. No one experiential perspective of the all as we're functioning on a physical plane is functioning as an omnipresent, omni-aware God form. You can't know all these things. You can't see all these things. And when we do magic, if you're functioning from a place of, I know what's best for me, this is what has to happen, you're already engaged in a form of arrogance and hubris that is telling the universe, teach me more lessons first. Teach me the lessons I really need, however painful they may be, right? Give me my way and make that a way of teaching me a lesson that this is not what I should have asked for. I should have been less arrogant. I should have tried to draw a greater perspective, all of these things. So if your magic's done correctly and you're not trying to break natural law, it is going to work. Again, whether or not it's a good thing that it works, that's part of setting intention correctly. You don't necessarily know what's best for you. I hate to sound, because people have, one of the things you learn in trying to be aware of the messages you're really sending when speaking to others is the natural defense mechanisms of the ego. And this is one of those phrases, you don't know what's best for you, that humans are conditioned in society to internally, egoically rebel against. But I'm not saying I know what's best for you. See, that's the ego saying, oh, I feel threatened. I feel scared. Someone's telling me they know better than me what's best for me. That's not what I'm saying, right? That is words being put into my mouth by your ego so that it can have this defensive posturing because it's very scared all the time. What I'm really saying is you don't necessarily know what's best for you. I'm not saying I do, but I definitely know that I don't always, and you definitely don't always. Now think about that, do you? No, you don't know if walking out of your house is going to get you hit by a meteor in an hour and a half. Whereas if you stayed home and watched one more lovely meditative podcast or something and didn't leave for an hour and 45 minutes, that meteor doesn't hit you. It crashes in front of where you're walking and you're completely unharmed. You don't know that. You don't know if it's best for you to leave now or wait 15 minutes. You don't know what's best for you in the sense of staying alive on the physical plane in this specific example. You don't know. So even though source or God, a word a lot of people have a lot of very unhealthy reactions to. Again, code words, they're words. They're words created from letters of intention to spelling, which has a lot to do, with ancient luminary form work. So the great architect, here's another word, universal energy, divine energy. The all absolutely knows what is quote unquote best for you. Inside the mortal coil and outside of it. It knows because, it is not having to conform to just this. So however you are, whatever is happening, even when it seems awful, is exactly how you're perfect, you're beautiful. It's exactly how it's meant to be. It is how the universe designed, manifested, and chose for you to be or to be experiencing, which is a very big deal. That's a very big deal. So it's important that when we set intentions that they be useful and not horribly dangerous, because they are powerful and you have to acknowledge this in some way or another. Again, saying something like, no matter what spell and no matter how wise and well experienced and you think you've seen every facet of everything you're asking for. Again, maybe you were asking for that car, right? And you have no awareness that getting that car means you'll get into a car accident the next day and, lose a limb or possibly. And again, if that were to happen, that's actually in some other ways an opportunity and a wonderful thing. I'm trying not to be too confusing, but when you set intentions, if you want to avoid what we on this plane, on this physical plane, would call the harder or more painful life lessons, create that phrase of, if it is in keeping with the great work, then so mote it be. May the all look upon this intention and safeguard myself and all those around me from any lesser or egoic imperfections that my intention carries that I might not be aware of yet. That's one, right? It's an out. It's a scapegoat. It's saying on some level, as I deeply interfere with my own subconscious and rewrite reality, also please leave room for me as a manifester to not rewrite reality in such a way that it will be harmful to me. So my will be done in accordance with the sacred laws of will. And so it is. If the universal powers judge it to be in the best, right, and good keeping. Or maybe the addendum to the spell is something like, this is what is. Unless it's bad in some way. Maybe you just say that. Maybe you're in a hurry, right? Maybe you think as you're doing this, let me at least acknowledge this is and will be. It already is. Unless I can't see some harm that I haven't taken the time to ferret out yet, then let it not be so. And, and then if my magic doesn't manifest, I know it's because it actually wasn't a good thing in some way that I wasn't aware of. Everything is part of something bigger and smaller after all. So anything that creates hurt or harm in what we consider the other, maybe other people, other parts of our environment, in getting what we want is actually harming ourselves. We're all interconnected. Everything is interconnected. Everything is part of something bigger. To hurt your neighbor is to bring harm to yourself. Although we might not notice it as readily, it is still definitely going on. And so not something any occultist with common sense does. You want to grease the gears of your reality and manifestation. You don't want to throw, gravel into them and be working against the ease of getting things done the way you want. So energy is a circle, and it might take a while, but harming someone else is self-harm in the larger scale of things. If you're from Stella Mutiny, Silver Star, Satanist practices, this. Not to harm others, you're harming yourself. Avoiding that sort of thing is crucial in occult magic. It interferes with what you're trying to actually get done and a great deal of opportunities that the universe has on your behalf already. So why wouldn't we want what's best for ourselves, especially while doing intentional magics? So you're going to need to say something like, I believe this is best for me, the thing I'm manifesting now. Hey, universe, if it isn't, feel free to circumvent my will. in all humility, in all love, please don't listen to me, the occultist. If there is a better way, a faster way, a less painful way, or if my thinking what I want interferes with me actually achieving something much greater that I'm maybe not even thinking of. So to do otherwise than to say these things or acknowledge them with great gratitude leaves way too much room for yielding outcomes that you did in fact ask for but didn't want. Which, again, when people ask for money magic and resource magic, you might not be asking the right questions yet. Let's say in the car scenario, you're asking for a car. Why are you asking for a car instead of just asking, what is it you really want? I want transport. Then just ask for transport. It's not even that I want transport. I want the ability to get to work. Having this car is what I see as the ability to have this job. Okay, well, maybe the car isn't even needed for that, or maybe there's a different job that you're not aware of that doesn't require it. Because what you're actually after there is the useful thing to do with your time in a way that you feel is healthy for you. That's what you're actually looking for. So why not ask for that? Perhaps it's not even that. It's, I want this because it'll allow me to work, because that gives me, this society's financial resources to have more decision-making power in my own life. What you're actually asking for is money, but you're not even asking for money. You're asking for decision-making power, the ability to, one, be secure, which is kind of an illusion and unnecessary, and you're only going to be here for 100 something years or so on the best day anyway. But you can't take it with you. This idea of constant security in life is so strange to those of us who really started looking towards what's meaningful. But maybe that's where you're functioning from. And maybe then what you're asking for is a sense of safety, which is actually backstepping from the challenging obstacles that are needed to progress your evolution. But maybe it's so that you can make more choices. I just want the ability to decide, because I have this car and therefore can have this job and therefore can earn this money, when I have to, say, do something and when I get to take a day off or an hour off or stay at home in safety and security and shelter. There's a lot going on there, and none of it is actually what you're asking for by asking for a car. Do you get a sense? Hopefully someone listening to this gets a sense of what I'm getting at here. All of those other things, those are the things you should really be delving into before doing your intention setting. And then you should be asking for what you actually want to have happen. You should be setting the intention and not asking, but creating those intended outcomes, which generally are not going to have anything to do with like a used Honda Civic or something. You just think they do from a very limited, self-limiting perspective that isn't necessarily in the best keeping with what you actually want to have happen. So you get the car, you get the job, and now you're unhappy at the job. You get the money. Maybe you're happy enough at the job and you get a lot of money because the car allowed you to get there. And then you get all these things and you realize, I'm still unhappy. Why? Well, I have all this money. I don't know who's a real friend and who's just hanging out with me because I have a car, job, and money. And now what am I actually asking? Oh, companionship or fealty is what actually mattered to me, not, and now I don't have those things. You see what I mean? There are bigger concepts to be approached than material resources. And if you're not approaching them yet, the material resources are likely to keep fleeing from you while you endlessly chase them. Because that is the construct of this society, this culture, this plane of existence, and the material form. It is not the construct of divine energy. It's just a very low-level facet of it. So again, you're going to need to say something along the lines of, as long as this is what's best for me, so mote it be. And those around me, hopefully. Another example, you ritually set an intention to have $50,000 USD, right? You want bills. You want them in hundreds. You want them in a brown leather briefcase. You get very specific. Again, not great for Magick, to really cage it into the smallest possible lack of opportunity, the tiniest little microscopic hole to squeeze through possible. But you want this in this form of paper currency, in this, so many red flags here. It's too specific. It's definitely not B-roll. So it's probably going to work out in all the worst ways. There's no room for all the channels of possible energy to flow to you. You're not leaving those all open. And maybe tomorrow isn't the best day for it. Sorry, I'm in a beanbag. So if you hear that, that's me shifting in my beanbag. So when you say, I want $50,000 in American currency tomorrow, within the next 24 hours, maybe tomorrow isn't the best day. Maybe a month from now would have been the best day. But you show no humility for your own limited nature and perspective. You show no gratitude to the divine natural law to know what's best and to bring it to you in the best way possible. You don't so much as bow your head to the universe's grace, power, or the absolute effects of the lessons it's about to teach you. Fine, right? Your magic will work. If you do it right, it's going to work, and you are going to wish it hadn't. So then you wake up the next morning, a person you love very much drops dead, and you inherit from them this briefcase of inheritance and exact change in these exact bills. You go, you pick it up, you hold it for all of, say, 32 seconds, and someone immediately kills you for it. Now, is that what you actually asked for? Absolutely. It is. You got exactly what you wanted. You got $50,000 in a briefcase in that form within the next 24 hours. but you didn't think about the things like, I want the ability to spend it. And you didn't leave room for that, right? You could have allowed the harmonies time to present you with a significant larger amount of necessary resources, say in this example, millions of dollars, maybe in real estate holdings in 2 months instead of 1 day, with your loved one by your side and not having to sacrifice anything in that way. And no easy way for anyone to perceive, one, that you had such a resource or had been given it, so they couldn't even know to be jealous or want to take it from you. And because it's actually in a format that can't easily be stolen, they can't just kill you and take it and walk away. But no, right? You needed your amount your way in the moment you thought you wanted it. And so now you hold $50,000 in cash for a minute or so, and a sudden unidentified brain aneurysm takes you out like that before buying so much as a latte with your magical money gains. That's the universe teaching you, it's evolving you, and it's doing what you asked, and your magic did work. But again, if you don't include your caveat, that's the way your magic's going to work, and you're going to wish it hadn't. So here's an even bigger lesson. And this is a lesson you need to learn to spur your continued energetic evolution. Believe it or not, the universe is still serving you in that scenario by, for lack of a more gentle term, bumping you off for your arrogance. The question is, how much longer before your energetic signature has the wisdom to see it and start thanking the universe for it? Thank you, universe, for teaching me that lesson. Right? How much longer before you realize the lesson that you are actually asking for, that a wonderful teacher took the time and energy to give you, because it was a pure and truer evaluation of, say, just how short-term the material is, or how these things, if you had them, wouldn't necessarily fulfill you, or just how little you understood your own limited perspective. You see these things as wants, and they're not actually important to you, maybe not as important to you as the companionship of a worthy friend of someone you love. Things that you've never stopped to think about. So from a universal energetic perspective, wanting things for oneself is, of course, always narcissistic. And there's no problem with narcissism. You can manifest it. Absolutely. You can seek to serve yourself. And in serving yourself, you will not ever get what you actually want. You will not, in not serving the whole and not giving, the greater laws of Ma'at, if you study Egyptian lore, the scrolls of the dead, giving opens up receiving. This is something all occult orders know, that to give is to be in alignment with the whole. That's an access to a tremendous power source, and a wondrous power source, which you are not going to regret having interfere with your physical manifested lifetime. But taking is absolutely out of alignment with the whole, and therefore will work, just not in a way you're going to be happy with. The whole is more than ready to teach and evolve you by any means necessary. And your magic work will work for you in all the worst ways possible, while also ultimately serving a much fuller purpose. And meanwhile, now that you've been bumped off in this imaginary scenario with this briefcase that someone else is walking away with, right? The cash you intended, and this person, maybe they got rid of you, and then they walk 5 feet and they get hit by a meteor, and a much more advanced worker of the craft who was on a lovely little nature hike walking by and already has so much more than they can ever need or want, and a complete awareness of that, and a gratitude for the things that really matter in life. And they're in the right place at the right time, and they feel great, right? And they are not focusing on wants. They're focusing on the love and gratitude they have for a certain friend that they're thinking about while they walk. and wishing them health and longevity, maybe something like this. And then they come across that person who's just been hit by the meteor. There's that briefcase of your cash sitting on the ground because you're gone. The person who stole it from you is now gone, and they just happen to be in the right place in the right time, and the universe offers up $50,000 in a briefcase. Because they're allowing space for the best to occur for everything, not just themselves, because they understand that they are a part of everything. Their vibration is already so high and so in keeping with the ascendant flow that perhaps they're already a millionaire. So then they come across this money and they don't even need it. And it's, to them, in a very real way, it's extra. And they donate it to a very worthy food bank in the neighborhood where 2 people just spontaneously died. And all this money was left behind and they came into possession of it. So this is why, by the way, money will then keep flowing back to them. If you stop to think about it, they're not seeking it, they're not chasing it, they're not wishing for it, they don't necessarily need it, they have what they need, they're very aware of that, they're in keeping with natural orders and natural laws. There are maybe a very high level occultist that seeks out, what is the next best lesson I can learn today? Give me a way again today to be in service, perhaps to humankind, perhaps to Gaia, to the planet, perhaps to, my own evolution as a part of everyone else. And these are the things they're asking for in their ritual magic. And so things like $50,000 of cash in a briefcase keep manifesting in front of them for them to give to food banks. Then they go, yes, my magic worked. I was shown the best way to be of use today, right? And they are grateful. They create space for this by giving first and not seeking. Don't be thirsty, right? Thirst tweets can be cute if they're done well, but if you're thirsty, it's a problem in magic, and it's a problem in your ritual magics. Be humble. Just think of that song, right? Sit down, be humble. Don't grasp at decaying treasure forms. Everything moves, everything changes. You think you're here right now for how long? You can't take it with you. You're a decaying treasure form. Be aware of that. That's a powerful thing to come into accordance with. It's not going to last for very long, and it's a very powerful thing. There are real treasures to seek, and you can employ those things and then have everything you think you want plus a million times better. Doing so invariably will lead to things like including material gains that you can make great use of for your own best purpose as part of the whole. It's not actually a sad story. This horrible little tale I just told, metaphorical tale where an occultist does a ritual for a briefcase full of money and then gets harmed, has the money taken from them, and then that person gets harmed. From a universal perspective, that is not a tragic story. It's not sad that I, in that scenario, if I'm the one who's done this, am no longer around. That's not a sad thing, right? Think about that person who was willing to do any form of magic, hurt anyone at anything to get this, without being aware that they should put a caveat in there as long as it doesn't do that. Not having that person near you, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? The universe removing them from the construct of this planet doesn't seem bad. No harm done. So if you don't want that to be you, if you don't want to be the universe's happy story, in ritual intention setting, really look at what you're asking for. You have to really look closely at what you're asking for big intention energy. You have to recognize yourself as already part of a whole, of a big cohesive energetic signature, an individualized bit experiencing a much broader picture, but already a part of that structure. And when you do this, very quickly, all worthy intentions become as ego-free, as selfless as you already actually are when removed from the conditioning and limited, often delusional perspective of these short-sighted temporal frameworks that most people believe themselves to be. Recognize what you really are in order to tap into the power of what you really are. Magic works fluidly, works well for the best purpose, including your own best purpose for you yourself. When it is of a means naturally holistic and selfless. So you aren't asking for a car, you're asking for the best method to allow your journey through the material to gain your highest self and allow you to fill your highest purpose. Which may in the short term, at least, the next 10 to 100 years, require something with wheels and an engine to speed up that process. And that might be exactly what the universe then manifests for you the very next day. But it also may not be. So reflection on the goal and its real value, first, foremost, always. And include that recognition in your intentional spell work. You aren't just asking for $50,000 in a briefcase for money. You're recognizing the reality in which you already have every necessary in hand to fulfill, again, your highest, best purpose, which you might not even already be aware of, will bring your highest joy. And the method of obtaining that purpose, replete with the opportunities needed to improve you. Why wouldn't we want to improve ourselves, right? The wisdom along the way to recognize these things, these opportunities, when they come along, so that you can apply your resources then rightly for the best outcome. That is a much more powerful intention setting magic spell to set, right? When you're doing money spells, resource spells, that is going to have a great deal better impact on you personally in a very selfish way than just asking for something like money or a car. And getting will and intention to cooperate together to do this is what Ritual Magic is employing. Until next time.